Hello Internet and welcome to this day in history for the 13th of November. We go back quite a while today. We go back to 1002 AD, in which the English king Aethelred II decided that he had way too much of all these Danish people living in England, so he decided to murder the crap out of everyone who lived there and who was identifying as Danish. So he did. More specifically, in what became known as the St. Brice's Day Massacre, he is known to have sent his troops to massacre every single man, woman, and child of Danish extraction he could find within his domains. So why did he do this? Well, there are several reasons. He himself basically claimed that there was a Danish conspiracy to murder him, and also that he was very, very tired of all the Danish Vikings coming over and plundering his coastal settlements, which one can of course understand. Another thing is of course that half of England, half of modern day England at this time was what we would call Danelaw, which was under local Danish rule. Not necessarily always from Denmark, but at least from Danish culture. However, no matter how much he justified the massacre to himself, to his people, and to posterity, in fact, most people have claimed that it probably wasn't as bad as it was made up to be. Most ancient massacres probably wasn't. There are some indications that perhaps less than 200 or 300 were actually murderized throughout England, but the problem was that he was obviously doing it as penalty for the Viking raids on his kingdom. Now, the way to ensure less Viking raids on your kingdom is not to murder the people who are living there and who are family members of the Viking. Now, holding them hostage, that might be one thing. Buying them off, that might be one thing. Marrying into their royal families, another thing. There are many ways of doing it. Slaughtering everyone who lives there and hope that the Vikings will go home might be considered a slight bit of naivety. And of course, when Sweyn the First of Denmark heard of this, he basically took his navy, sailed over there, and for 3 years ravaged the coastlines practically unhindered, no matter how much Aethelred would have liked to stop him. In fact, Sweyn returned 3 more times in the next decade before finally driving out the English from their own kingdom, taking it over in 1014 and establishing the Great North Sea Empire, which reached such a magnitude under his son Cnut the Great. Now, I am not saying that Sweyn Forkbeard would not have done this had the St. Brice's Day Massacre not taken place. I am saying that it might not have been the most brilliant strategical move for the English to perform such an event at a time where the Viking powers were at the height of their abilities, powers, and army numbers. Of course, less than 80 years later, the whole thing was at an end. Such it often goes. A thing often reaches its height just before the actual end of it. But yes, this was the St. Brice's Day Massacre of 1002, where Aethelred II of England murdered the shit out of every single Danish man, woman, and child he could find within his domains, and in return led to 10 years of retaliation by the Danish Vikings until, in fact, England ceased to exist for quite some time as a separate kingdom, and in fact, to a certain degree, only really managed to get back on its feet before, well, the Normans came in and took it over for good and ever. I hope this has been of interest to you. Until next time, I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.